Thanks for joining me. This is Danny, and welcome back to my modded 1.11.2 series. Today is our first day in our brand new house, and we are going to be playing with Actual Additions. We are kind of going to be picking up where we left off in episode 3 with Actual Additions. Where we got started with Actual Additions, we got our Atomic Reconstructor, we made a bunch of cool stuff, and now we're going to make some even cooler stuff. I did bookmark a few pages in the Actual Additions manual. I want to get into some batteries today, so that we can start powering our stuff in our inventory so that we're not always having to charge our wands and our drill manually. And we also want to get into the drill upgrades. We did quite a few upgrades in the first episode, but we stopped short of our drill mining augment and our first speed augment. I want to crank this thing all the way up to speed 3 so that it's really crazy fast. And that's gonna be fun. I also want to get into some greenhouse glass because we have this little farm set up here for canola, and this is our main source of power right now, canola oil. Well, we are refining or fermenting canola oil into oil, like oil, and we're running 2 coal generators, but this farm isn't quite keeping up with our demands. As you can see, there's nothing in here right now. There's one thing that all of these things have in common. They are all things that we could not do in the last episode because we did not get into empowering in that episode. So we today are going to make our first empowerer setup. So the empowerer from Actual Additions is going to be kind of, I guess you could say, a multi-block setup that requires 1 empowerer block and 5 display stands. Technically, we're going to set up 4 display stands, but we're going to craft 5 because we're going to need 1 for the empowerer. So I'm actually going to set up some auto-crafting for that stuff in a bit. So you may remember the last time we used our Atomic Reconstructor, which I'm hiding in the corner over here. And it does work when you have it facing up, which is pretty cool. You may remember that we made crystals with our Atomic Reconstructor in episode 3. Now we are going to empower those crystals with our empower setup in order to make some of the more advanced items, because those are crafting ingredients that we're going to need. The first thing I want to do before we get too deep into this stuff is to set up auto-crafting for the Atomic Reconstructor. So this is a little tiny bit difficult because if you remember, in order to make stuff for the Atomic Reconstructor, we have to drop it in the world, we have to give the Atomic Reconstructor a redstone signal, and then we have to pick up those items from the world and then put them back into our system. So here's what we're going to need to do that. We're going to need an Atomic Reconstructor, of course. We're going to need a crafter, of course, and then a filter. We need an automatic precision dropper from Actual Additions, and a ranged collector, also from Actual Additions. So we can do this almost exclusively with Actual Additions and vanilla, and we're also going to need a pressure plate, which I almost forgot. So our Atomic Reconstructor, actually let's just put this right here. And the ranged collector we can put just about anywhere. I'm actually going to put it there so that we can use this XNet node, which I'm not going to get into XNet in this episode. In a future episode, we are going to get very in-depth into XNet, but right now, suffice it to say, we're going to use XNet in order to transfer the items from our ranged collector, which is going to pick them up from the world, over into this chest, which is going to then be picked up by the importer in refined storage. The reason I'm doing that is because we're going to be dropping a lot of other stuff in this chest too, and that way we can just use the 1 importer. In the future, we're going to have a whole array of machines here that are going to be dropping stuff into that chest. So that's why I'm not just going directly into the RS system from the ranged collector at the moment. Let's see, what is the direction? That is east. So we're going to tell this to connect to the east. And then we're going to use this thing is going to be in whitelist mode, and we're going to use an item filter in order to tell this guy what to pick up, because we obviously don't want it to pick up everything. Here's the final setup, and I'm going to walk you through it right now. It's actually fairly simple. So I've got a crafter here pointing into the automatic precision dropper. So the crafter is going to insert things into the automatic precision dropper that are required for the crafting recipes. The dropper is going to drop things directly onto the pressure plate below, because that's how the automatic precision dropper works. Unlike a vanilla dropper, which just shoots stuff all over the place, this thing will actually drop it directly into the block space that it's pointing. And then when this pressure plate is activated, our Atomic Reconstructor will activate, because it is set to deactivation mode, which means that it will constantly go unless it has a redstone signal. So what I've got underneath the Atomic Reconstructor is, actually let's come in from over here, is I've got redstone coming from over there, going into a redstone torch. So we've just got a very basic NOT gate here, so that whenever something is on the pressure plate, it disables the redstone signal from the Atomic Reconstructor and causes it to pulse at intervals until the redstone signal is gone. So and the reason it's set up that way, as opposed to setting it to pulse mode, which would basically just have it pulse once whenever it gets a redstone signal, is that because it will only pulse once. So if we drop a whole bunch of stuff here that the Atomic Reconstructor doesn't have enough power to do in a single pulse, it's going to keep pulsing until all that stuff is gone. So then once we have the item that we want here, our ranged collector is going to pick it up. So we've got our item filter in there that has all of the items, all of the final results of things that were going to be picked up. And then once they get picked up, XNet is then going to grab from the ranged collector on this channel, which I'll get into more details with XNet in a future episode, but just for now, suffice it to say that this channel is an item channel, and we are extracting from the ranged collector, and we are inserting into our oak chest over here, which has an importer. So that brings it back into our refined storage system, and then our refined storage system knows that the recipe is complete. So that's how the whole setup works. So what I had to do, obviously first we set up all these machines, and we set up the redstone down below, as I showed you, and then I had to make all of these recipes. So what we're doing is the 6 crystals plus prismarine we're making from nether quartz, which we're going to be using a lot of prismarine in the future when we get into the empowering. And then we also have the 2 aesthetic quartz, the aesthetic quartz and the aesthetic green quartz, which require atomic reconstructing. So those are all the recipes that we have set up to be used by the Atomic Precision Dropper. And of course with refined storage makes it so easy to set those up. In the processing pattern encoder, all we had to do is click the recipe we want, click the Atomic Reconstructor tab, and hit the plus sign. So it's so nice that we don't actually have to make all these items before we can set up the recipes. So I set up the recipes first, and then I queued up one of each recipe. Because we do need to make one of each recipe in order to set up these filters. So, and of course the reason we have the filter here is because we don't want the range collector just picking up everything, because if we set the range collector to blacklist mode and allow it to pick up everything, it's going to pick up the redstone that we drop in order to make restonia, and it will never make the restonia. So we have to set up this filter to filter all of the items that we're autocrafting. And then we put that filter in here. Now we have, let's see, we have 9 items, so theoretically we could have just used the built-in filter here, but I do like to use these item filters because they're items that we can take out and move around, and they're more portable. So if we ever have to move our range collector, or if we ever put a different one there or whatever, I don't know why we would, but whatever, if this thing breaks for whatever reason, we still have our filters in the item filter, and we won't have to do those all over again. Let's say we want 20 Inori crystals. So it says, okay, we got 20 iron, and we can make 20 Inori crystals. So we wait here, and we can see it's dropping them down. We get a thing. It didn't get all the crystals because they're still dropping, but because we have it in deactivation mode, it's going to continue doing them, and as you can see, as soon as they became Inori crystals, they got pulled by a range collector and pulled back into our system. So now if we look for Inori crystals, we can see we have 20 Inori crystals. Hooray! Now the Precision Dropper and the Atomic Reconstructor are both 2 blocks away from the pressure plate so that they're not activated by it. If the Precision Dropper were 1 block down, it would just drop a single item, and then it wouldn't drop the next item until that one gets picked up, so it would really slow down the process. The Atomic Reconstructor would be activated by the pressure plate, and it would kind of negate the NOT gate, so then that wouldn't work either. And of course, you might want to put some glass around this or something so that you don't accidentally pick up items here, especially if you like to wear magnet rings. Well, I have a quartz shortage, so before we can do that, we're going to have to do a little bit of mining. So I'm upgrading my drill with the Augment 2 because we can do that without having to get into empowering. In order to do the third upgrade, we're going to need to be able to empower. But we can do the second upgrade, and we can also make some of our batteries too. So let's make some Actual Additions batteries. Battery. So there are 5 tiers of batteries holding respectively 200,000, 350,000, 600,000, and 1 million and 2 million crystal flux. The top one requires, we're probably going to go up to the quadruple battery today, but not until we have empowered stuff. For now, we can go to the double battery. So there we go. We can now store 200,000 crystal flux. And we have a double battery. Hooray! Right, my battery is fully charged. Now by default, the battery doesn't, it just holds RF or crystal flux or whatever. It doesn't charge any of our stuff until we activate it. So to do that, we just take it and we shift right click, and now it's all glowy. Now it is charging all of our stuff. Oh, it's the biomes of plenty biomes in hell. Or in the nether. Nice. It's the Undergarden. So there was an incompatibility between Natura and Biomes of Plenty, and it appears as if that's been fixed. Alright, we finally got our display stands, and now we can make our empower. And JEI does say that you need a charged battery, and when you click the plus, it doesn't grab it. So you do have to manually put it in there, and it does work with an uncharged battery. So there's our empower, and then we need our display stands. 3. Oh, put one right there. And now we're ready to go. So I'm going to set this up down here because we're going to set up autocrafting right away for it, which I think is going to be easier now than it used to be. So we've got our 4 display stands, and oh wait, actually those are not far enough apart. The display stands need to be 3 blocks away from the empower, which goes in the center. So we do need a 7x7 area for this setup. Here we go. Well, I guess we are going to get into XNet a little bit more than I was expecting today, because for this setup, we're kind of going to need it. But we're just going to kind of scratch the surface a little bit, just enough in order to get autocrafting for all of our crystals, because we're going to be making a lot of empowered crystals, and I don't want to be without autocrafting. So I've got the empower and the display stand set up. And I've got the XNet cables running to all of them, and then I have a connector connecting to each one. Of course, we could do this under the ground. I just thought it would look kind of interesting if we did it up here. But we could completely hide all this stuff if we wanted to, but whatever. So I've got power going into the display stands through XNet. So we have this whole XNet network, and the main thing is that we have a connector going to this controller. So we can ignore everything else. Because we're using separate channels for this setup. So channel 1 is a power channel. So when I first set up the channel, selected XNet energy. That's the default. You can toggle through this stuff. So XNet energy, and I click create, and that created an energy channel. So this energy channel is pulling energy. We've got a connector on this power cell. It's pulling energy from the power cell. So if we look at channel 1 and we look at the power cell, we're going to see that we are extracting from the power cell. And that's all we really have to do. So by default, I think it's insert. We just change that to extract. And then for each of the display stands, we're going to insert. So that's easy. That's the easy part. And we only have to power the display stands. We do not have to power the empower itself because it gets its power from the display stands. So then, here's where things get a little bit more difficult, and that is channel 3 is an item channel. So I created the item channel, and I got channel 3. And in channel 3, we are extracting from a chest. We are inserting into the 4 display stands and the empowerer. So the 4 display stands I have at priority 0, and we have an empty filter, so it'll allow anything to go in there. For the empowerer, I have a priority of 1, and I have filters. So these are the 6 things that it's going to accept, and those are the 6 crystal blocks. These are the unempowered crystal blocks. So in order to make the empowered crystals, in the empower, we're going to set a crystal block in the center. We can also do these with empowered crystals. We can also make empowered crystals rather than making empowered crystal blocks by using single crystals rather than crystal blocks. However, the other ingredients are the same. So we're going to save ingredients. We're also going to save RF if we just do this one block at a time. So all of the autocrafting that I have set up is block based. So we have a Restonia crystal block in the middle. That means that's what we're going to put in the empowerer. And then we have these 4 items on the outside. Those are what we're going to put in the display stands. So as long as we set this thing up so that it only places 1 recipe at a time in the chest, and that we specifically tell it that we want the crystal block to go in the empowerer, the other 4 ingredients will just be placed in the other display stands, which can only take 1 item anyway. So like if we try to put a stack of oak planks in here, it'll only take 1. So we don't have to worry about oh, that looks a little weird. We don't have to worry about it not dispersing the items through the 4 pedestals or display stands. So what's going to happen is we've got a crafter on this chest. That was the oak chest that when we were looking in here, that's the oak chest that we're extracting from. So the crafter is going to place the items necessary for these recipes. They're going to get dumped in this chest, and it's going to grab the crystal block, and it's going to put it in there, and it's going to grab everything else that gets dumped and put it on the outside. I had to make a block of each of these in order to make the filter for the empower, and that should be the only place we needed a filter for. And then this channel, we're not going to set this up yet, but eventually this is our another item channel that's pulling things out of our various autocrafting setups and putting them in this chest, which is the chest with the importer on. That's where everything is getting pulled into the RS system. So eventually we're going to have this thing pull from the empowerer and drop into this chest. But we only wanted to pull the result, and we don't have any results yet to set the filter, so we're not going to set that up, because if we have an empty filter, it's just going to pull everything out. So it's going to put the block in there, and then it's going to pull it back out, and the empowering will never happen. So we're not going to set that up yet until we do our first recipe. However, I did something wrong with these recipes, so I'm going to do them with you so that you can see what I did wrong and know not to make the same mistake. I'm going to clear these all. And so in our processing pattern encoder, because this is kind of a machine processing thing, we're going to set up all these recipes, and we're going to say blocking. So blocking means that while this recipe is going on, it's going to block any other recipes from going on. Because we don't want it to drop more than 1 recipe in that chest at a time. Because that'll screw everything up. Because then it'll end up mixing up recipes, and they'll get stuck in the empower, and nothing will happen. Alright, let's give this a try. So I'm going to say, give me 2 empowered Restonia crystal blocks. And oh, okay, so it's making the Restonia. That shouldn't have been necessary. Oh, okay. Yay! Oh wow, it's working. Very nice. So this chest should be empty. Yes, that chest is empty right now, and it should remain empty until it gets that back. Nice. Okay, so that's done. The chest is still empty. The crafting system is waiting for this block. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to grab this block, and I'm going to use it in a filter here and say that we want to extract from the empowerer So we're creating a node on the channel, and we're extracting this. So right now that's the only thing that it's going to extract, so we don't have to worry about it pulling out our next thing. So now I'm going to put this in here, and as soon as I do, it should set up the next recipe. Yes. Very nice. Oh my gosh. I am so glad that Refined Storage has that feature now. That's actually a new feature, the blocking, that makes this, oh my gosh. You have no idea. Maybe you do. If you've ever seen me set this up in the past, you know that this is so much simpler than it used to be. Nice. And it pulled it out. Very cool. So if we look in here, we should see empowered 2 empower Restonia crystal blocks. That is awesome. So I'm going to craft one of each of the rest and put the filters in here so that this whole process will be 100% automated. We will never have to do any manual crafting of empowering ever. Oh, and by the way, I made 6 crafting recipes to make the blocks from the crystals, and then I made 6 crafting recipes to make the individual empowered crystals from the empowered crystal blocks. So one little bonus I wasn't expecting, all of the empowered crystal blocks have the same ID. So, XNet already knows, because all I had to do was give it that one block. It already knows how to pull out the rest of the blocks, because I set up the recipes for the other empowered, or I queued them up, and it just pulled them all out when they were ready. It's time to make some greenhouse glass. I don't know if we have everything we need for it yet, but let's give this a try. Because that's my top priority right now. We're having some power issues because our farm is not keeping up with our power usage at the moment. So let's start with maybe 9 of these so we can do a 3x3 area. Starters, and we have everything we need to craft it. Awesome. Yeah. Look at that. Nice. So we should see some stuff going on over here. Oh no. We ran out of power. Shoot. Oh no. I managed to get three pieces of greenhouse, or 3 blocks of greenhouse glass. I'm going to build some kind of a structure here, like an actual greenhouse at some point, but not today. This project has been taking a really long time because of the whole resource issues I've been having. But for now, I'm just going to make an ugly square frame around it. Okay, hooray! So we now have greenhouse glass covering part of it, which means that these guys are going to, as you can see, the little bone meal effect. These guys during the day, they're going to grow much faster. It's basically going to speed up the growth ticks. And don't worry, we will do empowered oil in the future, but not today. Right now it's just much more efficient for us to just produce more canola rather than go through that whole process. I'm finally at a point where I'm producing more RF than I'm using, so I don't even have to turn my RF system off when I'm not using it anymore. Although empowering takes a lot of RF, so I do lose some while I'm empowering, but that's okay. That's not a problem as long as our normal everyday use is less than what we're producing. So what I've got, well, I have greenhouse glass on the first 3 rows, so about 1/3 of the farm. It's making this all grow much faster. So, and I doubled the number of oil generators and quadrupled the number of fermenting barrels. So we now have 4 fermenting barrels and 4 oil generators. Each fermenting barrel produces more than enough for 1 generator, but not quite enough for 2 generators to run constantly. So I just did 1 for each. And if I was using tanks, I could probably do 3 fermenting barrels for 4 oil generators. But yeah, this is what I'm doing now. I've got 1 canola press, and that seems to be keeping up with all 4 fermenting barrels. and then I have 4 oil generators. And I only had 2 before, so I'm now producing 240 CF per tick. From this, I also have a coal generator over here that I'm just using temporarily until we get this thing filled up. And yes, we're definitely producing more canola now than we're using, actually considerably more. So we could actually probably get another setup, maybe even another setup like this one, and double our RF production once again. And eventually I'm going to have this whole thing full of greenhouse glass, and I'm probably going to have like a whole array of those oil generators at the bottom. In fact, I may end up having to move it to a place where we have a little bit more space. But that's all I'm going to do today. So now that we're generating, that is not the manual I want to look at. Now that we're generating enough RF and we've got our empowerment setup, our empowerer setup, in the very near future we'll be able to upgrade our batteries and our drill and make an experienced solidifier and a player interface. So we're going to do that in the very near future. But I think that's enough for now. This took quite a bit of time, and I actually wasn't even planning on doing the autocrafting today for actual editions, but I did. So now we've got that, and that's awesome because now we won't have to worry about that anymore. So if you do have any questions, of course, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below, or if you have any comments or suggestions or ideas or whatever. And of course, if you did enjoy this, don't forget to click the like button and to join me next time. Bye bye.